So, there is a beautiful lesson in the Puranas. Am I audible? So there is a beautiful lesson in the Puranas that even gods make mistakes. They make terrible decisions. They fight wars. They misunderstand each other because life, even when you're a god, is not perfect. So, which means confusion for us humans is not failure. It's just part of the process. And clarity, well, clarity comes to you when you least expect it. And I remember one of those moments came to me in 2021 when the ambulance driver turned around and asked me, "Ye kiske papa the? Whose father was he?" And I remember that exact moment when I heard the past tense, and something strange happened inside me. Time twisted, it fractured, and then it froze. And I realized in that moment that there was something that had quietly shaped my entire life, which was a clock. My father was a dialysis patient for 6 years, 3 times a week. And so, hospitals, machines, waiting rooms, and through it all, I always felt like I was running against time because every son's secret ambition in life is not to just succeed, but to show his father the man that he's capable of becoming. And so, with every achievement, with every step forward, I always felt the same question inside me, which was, will he get to see this? My father used to tell me something almost every day. Time waits for no one. And strangely, it was the day that I lost him that it hit me the most. And I also realized something very simple, that we are not immortal, and the time that we think we have, we don't. But that's the strange thing about love, that even though he's gone, I feel like he hasn't stopped watching. I believe that he somewhere he still gets to see my journey. Now, the thing, if tragedy taught me about time, chaos taught me about something else. Actors' lives are full of chaos. I was auditioning for almost 9 years, and you audition. You have so many. You go through so many people who audition you. There are hundreds of rooms, uh, hundreds of strangers deciding whether you're good enough. Sometimes in less than 30 seconds. I remember one particular audition. I prepared well for it, so I walked in confidently. The scene required me to cry. Now, if you know us actors, that's the part that we all secretly panic about because you can practice dialogue, you can practice blocking, but crying on command, that's a whole different story. So I did the scene, and halfway through it, something unexpected happened. I actually started crying. Not the actor kind of crying, these were real tears. Because at that moment, all the frustration, all the rejection, all the uncertainty of whether this dream will ever come true came out. And so, for the first time in my life, I absolutely nailed the crying scene. And I still didn't get that part. Now, that's the thing about uncertainty, is that it fills you with doubt. And by doubt, I don't mean self doubt. I, I never doubted whether I could do it. The doubt was always about how and when, if that moment would ever arrive. There is a difference between doubting yourself and doubting the timing of the universe. I would do everything in my ability to become an actor, but the universe has its own schedule. And so now, looking back, when I think of when the doors finally opened and I started getting opportunities, I realized something very humbling, that a lot of it is luck. A friend once told me, luck hits a moving target. And so I guess that's the lesson there, that you stubbornly keep at it. Now, I started my life as an actor when I first went to Mumbai, and this is one of my earlier days where I auditioned for a play. When I got off the auto and I reached the audition venue, I saw a huge line of actors waiting there. The line was so long that it started at the room and it you know went down the staircase and almost onto the pavement. In fact, the line was so long that it almost reached the auto rickshaw that I just stepped out of. Now, this is a typical scenario in Mumbai. You go for any audition, there are thousands of actors waiting there, vying for a bunch of roles. And so now I froze in that moment because you see competition in your face. And so I froze and I thought like, you know, let's just go back. Because I believe that actors and artists shouldn't compete, but those days it was all about getting your foot in the door. And I thought to myself, maybe I'll try a different door. I'll go back. Nobody will even notice. But then I paused. I thought for a moment, and I realized, and I asked myself, isn't this what I've come to Mumbai for? Isn't this what I left my job for? Isn't this what I fought with my parents for? And so I turned around and I went and stood in that line. And I waited and I waited and I waited. And I finally got that part. And I also got my first lesson in what it was really going to take. The work is not in the audition. The work is in your ability to go stand in that line. Because you stand in that line and you hope and you show up day after day and you know that your turn will come at some point. Now, it was not just my passion for acting and cinema that kept me going. It was also the friends that I made along the way who took care of me. Friends who gave me a couch to sleep on. Friends who bought food for me. Friends who paid my rent. I eventually paid them back, but friends who said that he's not going to quit. And so I went through with it without knowing if my dream would ever come true. And at that point, I was even okay if it didn't come through. So I just went with it. Because I realized that the longer you stay in the game, and if you stay long enough, eventually something will happen. And that's when you realize that the doubt quietens and the clarity returns. Now it's been 16, 17 years since I stepped out to become an actor. I've always looked at this journey as more of an adventure that I stepped out to be a part of. And so all the highs and lows are, part of the deal. So with stubborn optimism, I moved forward. And that led me to, you're going to think that I'm going to say it led me to a turning point in my life. Well, it sort of did. I got my first commercial Hindi film called Jhund, which was directed by Nagaraj Manjule. And my co-star was also going to be my on-screen father, was someone I had admired all my life, the one and only Amitabh Bachchan. Now you're going to think that this was the happy ending to my story of struggle. Well, the universe has its own schedule. That film didn't start for 1.5 years. Anyway, after I finished Jhund, I got my first Malayalam film almost immediately called Pada. I auditioned for another part, and seeing that audition, the director, Kamal KM, asked me if I could test for the role of the collector, which was the more prominent role. And so I auditioned 8, 9 times, rounds after rounds, and I didn't even know if I'm part of the film. I finally knew that I got the role only when they called me to set. And so I grew up in Pune. Malayalam cinema was not even in my horizon. And yet, here there was a door which I didn't even know existed was suddenly opening up. And just as these films were being completed, the world shut down. Lockdown happened. So it was 3 years of now waiting. Projects that I had poured my heart into. Rocket Boys happened during the lockdown. So Rocket Boys Jhund Pada sat there in uncertainty. We didn't even know if movies and the theater would even exist. And so with all that waiting, my parents were happy that they finally saw my dreams taking shape. But there was only one question hanging on all of us, which was, will these films ever release? And for me personally, will my father be able to see it? And then during the lockdown, I lost him. 10 months later, 3 successive Fridays, Rocket Boys Jhund Pada released one after the other. And that's the thing. You just have faith in the timing of the universe and you move forward. These are things not in your control. So when I think of uncertainty, it was not tragedy and chaos that gave me clarity. It was watching my mother. My father was sick for a long time, which obviously meant a lot of hospital visits, a lot of paperwork, a lot of appointments. And through it all, I saw my mother taking care of my father and dealing with all of these things. She didn't have a smile on her face. She didn't like what she had to do. She complained, she scolded me, she was frustrated. But at no point did she ever give up. And that's when I realized something extraordinary, which is that nothing beats the tenacity of a caregiver. To show up every day, not because it's easy, but because love demands it. My mother was a teacher, but along with being a teacher, she worked long hours, she did odd jobs. She's worked as a beautician to earn extra money. She handled the hospital staff when things were not going right. And through it all, she took care of my father. And that's when I realized that it is from her that I get this ability to see things through, the ability to stand in long audition lines, to keep going even when you hit walls, to learn a new language, to move cities, to move industries, even when the obstacles seem much bigger than the dream itself. So I kept going, and I learned persistence from my father, but I learned endurance from my mother. And I'm still learning. So when I think of clarity in uncertain times, I think of the 3 things. That is, tragedy teaches you about time, chaos teaches you about persistence, and uncertainty teaches you about love. And I guess that's what the Puranas were trying to tell us all along, that gods make mistakes, gods fail. So can we. Life is not about certainty. Life is about continuing the journey, learning, failing, making the same mistakes, repeating patterns, and you get up once more and keep continuing. And to do our best to make this brief moment that we have here meaningful. And if we are lucky, along the way, we will find people who will make this journey worthwhile. Thank you.